Good evening, everyone. My name is Klocko. I'm the chairman of the Millis Permanent Building Committee and also the Millis Elementary School Building Committee. You can see that ESBC, Elementary School Building Committee, mentioned throughout, and that's really kind of the name of this group. Just a couple housekeeping things. Lavatories for adults are right out the door and across the hall. Children, we have daycare, obviously, as you came in the media center, and kids' lavatories. I'm going to talk a little bit about how we got to where we are right now, and then I'm going to turn it over to Tim Bonfatti, principal of our project manager, Compass Project Management from Medfield, about where we go from here. But the main attraction tonight is Frank Lockner, who's our educational consultant, and he's a very dynamic, great guy. And the first thing he's going to do is make you all get up and move around so you're not sitting next to your spouse or neighbor or whatever, because the objective is to learn from other people and exchange ideas. We're going to work for a hard stop at 9 o'clock tonight. But the one thing that I want to say right off the bat is that the purpose of tonight's meeting is to talk about and discuss the educational plan of what we want our schools to do for the next 50 years. It's not about bricks and mortar. It's not about design. It's not about what it's going to look like or how big it's going to be or any of that. It's about what's the right environment for educating our children. This is the first of the community sessions. There will be two more, or three more, two in February.
There's two more over the next 2 months.
And they will be a little more granular in terms of design options. But tonight is the start of that process. And we're going to talk about how the educational plan works. We did the session with the teachers on Friday. If any of you have had any contact with any of the elementary and fifth grade teachers, they were pretty excited. So now's the time to get community involvement and make sure that we're on the right track for what Millis really needs. So with that, let me just introduce people here that have been involved in the process. As I mentioned, Tim Bonfatti, Compass Project Management, they are our project manager, and they will be with us through the entire process. The educational component of our ESBC is Nancy Gustafson, our Superintendent, and Jason Phelps. In addition, I have Tim McDuff. He's on the committee as well. He's in charge of facilities. Frank Lockner, our educational consultant, will be really the main attraction tonight, and he's going to talk about, in fact, well, I'm going to let him decide. He can tell you what he's going to do. And then we have the other part of our team is our architects. That's Chris Blessen from Tappe, architectural firm in Boston. They specialize in public facilities, and schools is their primary concentration. So the project team is made up of the voting members that you see here, myself, Denise Gibbons from the school committee, John Wine, Ted Schultz, Diane Germain, the additional but non-voting members are Nancy and Jason, basketball. The town administrator, Chris Smith, the chair of the selectmen, and Dave Baker, who's been very helpful in terms of evaluating sites around town. So that's the group, and we've been working for quite a while on this project now. So I hope I'm not saying it this way. Just to kind of level set how we got to where we're at. Millis submitted a statement of interest to the MESBC, which is the Commonwealth's funding board, and whose process we're following. This is all a prescribed process, and we're going through all the steps that they require us to do, and that any school project would be required to do. And so we got invited into that program in June of 14. We formed the committee that I just told you about shortly thereafter. The town approved the funding for the feasibility study in March of that year. And I just would take 1 second to tell you that the $1 million that you approved is more than a study. And it's really relatively complex. We are looking at numerous sites in town, both public and privately owned, where we might site a new school, and we will evaluate all of the options from simply renovating this building to get it up to code, all the way to constructing a brand new building and everything in between. Renovations, additions, new construction, some iterations of all of those. And frankly, it's a great process to go through because it's our due diligence to make sure that we've considered every option. So that's much more than a study, and will actually get us all the way to a preferred plan. Tim is going to talk about what that is in a little more detail. And so we are working, well, I'll let him talk about where we're working towards. We hired Compass Project Management in November, and Tim Bonfatti is also on the school committee of Medfield, so he's not only is he a consultant, but he also understands our role as a client. He's also on the building committee of Medfield, so he speaks our language, and we're great to have him on board. His firm is also the project manager on the police and fire project. We hired Tappe from 12 or 15 possibilities. Is that right, Denise? Mm-hmm. We worked with the MESBC, did interviews, and Tappe was by far our first selection. I think we've got a great architect. And we hired them in December, and that brings us to where we are today. So it's going to be a great night. I think you're going to be very energized to talk about what the school of the next 20 to 50 years looks like. And so with that, I will turn it over to Tim to talk about what those next steps entail.
Thanks, Wayne. So I'm going to just pick up from today and kind of put some context about what we're going to be doing over the next pretty much 9 months, you'll see. So as Wayne said, the MESBC has a very well-defined process with communities to make sure that they get the right solution. It's basically a 4-step process. The next step, the step that we're engaged in right now, is sort of defining the building. That's what tonight's about, defining the spaces, defining the size, the educational plan, which we'll hear more about. That gets submitted to the MESBC mid-February, so that's the first step. At that point, once they kind of get back to us and we work with them over whatever we need to tweak on that, we enter the second step, which is to sort of evaluate all the alternatives. Tonight's not about talking a lot about the alternatives, but we are going to share with you at least some of the work that's gone on with that at the end of the session. With that second step, we'll submit what's called the preferred alternative in April. We're going to be submitting it, and the idea is that we submit in April in time for a May town meeting, a May MESBC board meeting to approve what the preferred option. So we do move fairly expeditiously, but as Wayne said, there's going to be plenty of opportunity for people to contribute. While it's well-defined, the idea is to be as transparent as possible and get as much input from the community throughout the process. So, provided we get to May's board meeting with an approved alternative, which you would expect, we keep them apprised all along the way, so we would expect that would be the case. We would then enter the summer and into the fall, basically doing roughly 30% of the design on the preferred alternative. And so when you do that, what it allows is that we get a very defined budget for the project. We know the schedule, we know the sort of phasing if that's part of the process. And it allows us to work with the MSBA to basically come back to the town in August or so with both the cost and the schedule and the town's share. What the town's share at that point would be in August of this year, we would expect to have that. And a quick word on, just because I know that there's been some stuff in the media about the reimbursement rate and what the town's share is. We won't know that definitively until August. There are a number of costs that are eligible for reimbursement, and then there are other costs that are not eligible for reimbursement. So before people jump to a lot of conclusions around that, it's probably a good idea to let the process play out until we get to August. The August submission then would be teed up for a September board vote at the MSBA on the project. And these projects, if they've gotten that far, are generally going to be supported by the MSBA board at that September board vote. We haven't seen one yet that's gotten voted down by the board after it's gone through this process. That, assuming that vote, and as I said, it's a pretty good likely assumption, a positive vote, then the town has 120 days, but we've timed it to basically time in with the election cycle of November to approve the deal that the MSBA is offering. So that process is a two-step process. There would be a debt exclusion and a town meeting vote. Those haven't been scheduled, but we're expecting that those are going to occur in the October-November time. Currently, we're looking around that as the time. So that'll obviously have to be worked out with the selectmen in terms of time. So that's the schedule and the process as we go forward. As I said, it moves expeditiously, but there'll be plenty of opportunities for input. And of course, we welcome it. And we're going to get a little bit into at the end about all the where you can go to get more information on the project and send in some of your concerns or issues you want to see done. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Nancy, who is going to talk about Millis education.
Hi, I'm Nancy Gustafson, the superintendent in Millis, and I welcome you all. I know that you're going to enjoy this evening because we did this in a similar way with staff the other day, and it was really energizing, and it's an opportunity for us to envision the future and how a building can support what we want for our children in Millis. So Millis is unique, and I think probably you live here because you know this, and it's what initially attracts a lot of people to Millis, including myself, and then more important, it's why a lot of people stay. And it's this idea of a small school, big family, small town, big family, and that feeling of community. And it's not just a motto. People live it. And those of you who have kids in the schools, I hope you recognize that. What you're going to hear from our educational consultant tonight, there are seeds throughout my time here in Millis. I was here for 2 years as director of curriculum and have been here 10 years as superintendent. And we have, during that time, had some very nice awards. We have a fairly low, quite low per pupil expenditure, so we've twice been recognized for our high return on investment. You know perhaps that we're a model site for the Tools of the Mind program in preschool and kindergarten. We're a model for the, of course, the Spanish immersion, and now our FLES program, so 100% of our students get 13 years of a foreign language, which is critical in a global economy. Go back, I'm sorry, it's not going back. There we go. So our video production and arts programs are very strong during fiscally tough times. We have never cut our arts, our music, our PE. Those are critical to education of the whole child. We have, especially at Clyde Brown through 5th grade, a wonderful National Science Foundation grant partnership that we initiated and developed. We were the pilot site and continue to be a model site for the engineering and integrating that with our literacy here. And that's a perfect example of what you'll hear is really necessary for a 21st century education these days. That type of activity is very exciting. Our high school continues to be designated as one of the top 5 to 7% in the nation because of the equity and excellence that we have, percentage of kids reaching AP, doing well on AP exams, advanced placement, which are college level exams. Keep doing that. Our middle school has been an Apple Distinguished School for 3 years in a row, and because of our blended learning, you'll hear more about blended learning, and that's happening at Clyde Brown as well. And of course, we have, along with all of this, a much greater acceptance to highly competitive colleges than when I arrived here 12 years ago. It is not my doing. This part of this huge accomplishment is truly because of our culture and the collaboration with you in doing so. We do focus on and really believe wholeheartedly in a collaborative culture, and we put that in place, caring, a culture of effort. You've heard a lot about grit, perhaps. We celebrate that. It is civic contribution and character development are an important part of life skills. It's not all about test scores. I know you know that. I have an 8th grader and a 5th grader at home, and so I'm constantly telling my 8th grader, don't worry about your grades so much. That's not what's important. What's important is becoming a lifelong learner and being excited about it. So what we've, throughout those 12 years that I've been here, we've focused on the right kind of rigor, I think, through real-world relevance, through relationships. Our staff connects with kids and knows the kids, I believe, better than any other district in the state, any place else I've worked. It is truly a hallmark, and it's that small school, big family coming to life in the classroom. And they live it. They really live it. We believe and have always promoted the active, hands-on, project-based and inquiry-based learning that business tells us our kids need to be innovators in an innovation economy. And we've done that through what we call responsive teaching, is that you have to know your kids really well first, not only their skill level, so you can challenge them. Some kids already know it. You have to personalize that as a teacher, and believe me, it's a tall order. So you know your kids well, their interests, their passions, what motivates them, what they struggle with. And then as a professional, the teacher adjusts, and they're responsive to the kids' needs. And this is cut off, but we do that through, and this is what we're really excited about teaching, is personalizing learning in Millis. And this is, you'll hear more about this, but it is truly a vision, a mission that we have. And we, for the past 2 years, have, with staff, developed our vision of personalized learning, of honoring kids where they are and who they are, their passions, their skill levels, strengths, what they struggle with, and bringing them into the learning process so they own their learning more. They are part of, and believe me, it's a journey. Each year we get better and better at this, so that they own the learning, they have more voice and choice. It's called Universal Design for Learning, where they have choices in how they learn and then how they can show demonstrate that they've learned it. And that is important. Technology is not for technology's sake, believe me. It is all in service of this. And we focused a lot on student well-being these days too, because of the stress and anxiety that students feel. And having a holistic education means we really take care of the whole person and try to help students. For example, the middle school early morning fitness program that we just started will be starting up again at Clyde for kids to be active in the morning and have exercise and breakfast before school starts. That's part of reducing stress and anxiety. So you probably read about some of those exciting things. This personalizing learning is important because learners are an integral part of the process, and we're really moving forward on this, and staff is phenomenal. They connect well with kids. They have to know them very well first. So any of the ongoing assessments that they do at Clyde Brown, it used to be Ames Web, now it's Star Math and Reading, are all in service of saying, okay, where's this kid at, and how can I help him or her progress? And it's monitoring learning. It's not assessment in a judgmental way in any way, and engaging the learners, etc. So we're really psyched about this as what a new learning environment, either renovated or new or additions, etc., can help us do is do this better. It's about increasing student voice choice and having them own the learning process, much more project-based learning. And they become expert learners. I have no idea why the R is now big. It didn't used to be, but they become expert learners who have that voice and choice. They're actively engaged, thus they're motivated, and they really own because they are part of the goal-setting process, and they are part of having a purpose for their learning, not just because I said so as a teacher. So, our opportunity with this project is to envision how an environment can help us do all of that better. We think we're on the right track. We are not, even though there are a lot of state mandates that come at us, we have been focused on the same thing for the past 12 years here, because it's a journey that I believe in my heart of hearts is what's right for kids. And the research tells us, and business tells us, that this is what they're going to need in the future. So the environment can impede that, and does impede that at Clyde Brown and at the middle high school due to crowding, lack of storage, all kinds of other things that we'll get into. But the point being is I think we're on the right track. I think, and I'm hoping that you've experienced that what I've said is part of your experience as families. And I really appreciate that you're here tonight to give us your input. So if you think we're on the wrong track, feel free to write at length about it and talk to us about it. And I'm going to introduce Jason Phelps, the principal of Clyde Brown, who has, he'll speak to you for a couple of minutes, and we'll be here this evening as after the presentation part is finished.
Good evening, everybody. I see lots of familiar faces as I look around the cafeteria tonight. And again, thank you so much for coming out tonight. I was thinking on my way into work this morning, you know, we spend a lot of time thinking about 21st century skills, developing the right skill set for those students so that they're successful in the workplace that they soon enter. The reality is, the 21st century is 15% over. And by the time children who are entering preschool this year graduate from high school, the 21st century will be about a third over. Wow, where did those years go, first of all? Secondly, you know, it really gives me pause to think about the wonderful things that is about, but also how lucky I am as a principal to work with a staff of teachers who so thoroughly embrace new instructional methodologies. I'm sure your folks at home and share with you some of the exciting things that are going on in classrooms. You know, I have the ability to, of course, I do be able to go into classrooms and see exciting things happening. I try to communicate that out through the weekly highlights that I send home. You know, whether it's kindergartners who are learning how to conference with teachers, set their own goals around writing and academics, or first graders who are working in small groups to master reading, second graders who are building actual bridges through scientific process and problem solving, or third graders who are applying that collaborative mindset to construction of birds' nests and really testing what materials make the strongest nests and what elements create the most successful learning experiences in that capacity. Or fourth graders who are really kind of beginning their own personalized journey inward as they think about areas that are passionate for them and really kind of research these areas through a program called Genius Hour that promotes their own evolving sense of purpose of students in researching deeply and presenting to different audiences what they've learned. So there's a lot of great things going on in our school. And I'm just so glad to be working with faculty and teachers who are so committed to embracing these new methodologies. And what's telling for me is that as I walk through classrooms, I see groups of kids working on the floor, working in hallways. They will pretty much work any place where we have space. And it dawns on me that we're trying to adapt a 21st century model of learning to a 20th century learning environment. Is it possible? No. We have great teachers, we have great kids, we have great families who work with us. But, you know, I think as a principal, how much more effective our job would be if we could have a space that's more fluid and flexible. We were able to kind of pull together space configurations as we need them for the learning that has to come. But I'm hoping that, you know, as Frank goes through the presentation tonight, you'll get a better understanding of some of the things that we are attempting in here, I found it in Millis in general, and it'll help you to understand some of the barriers that we're up against in, you know, as we try to give the kids the best possible to prepare them for their work. So enough said. Thank you again for being here this evening, and I'm going to introduce Frank Lockner.
All right, and housekeeping, have your cell phones turned off or on vibrate? Sure. And you all know where the bathrooms are, right? Somewhere out there. I know there's somewhere out there. Okay, so you've got agendas in front of you. We're running a little bit late, but I'm going to aim to get you out of here on time. We are at the hopes and concerns. I've got two flip charts up here, and I'm going to lead you, or I'm going to listen to you while you shout out your hopes and concerns for this project. That'll be the first thing we do. Then we're going to jump into exploring innovations in education. There's a handout for that further in your pack. But this picks up on some things that Nancy Gustafson was talking about, and it's going to ask you for your feelings about some of these innovations from the minuscule descriptions I'm going to give them. It's just a temperature taking, but we thought it'd be interesting to see what your thoughts were on these, particularly as applied to elementary schools. Then we'll take a break. Then after the break, we'll come back and have you work with your table team. And by the way, the other ones, Exploring Innovations in Education, will be with your table team as well. But after the break, we're going to come back and we're going to ask you to explore community use of the building. How can we make this building work harder and work longer 7 days a week for serving things other than school? And maybe some of them overlap with school. Nancy mentioned some of the before school programs, and that's one of those kind of overlapping ones. And then lastly, in the last 10 minutes, Chris Blessen, our lead architect, is going to give you a quick slideshow on what's coming up in terms of updating in terms of an update of the feasibility study. So that's the evening. We're hoping to knock off at 9 and take home as you were planned. All right, ready to roll? All right. Water. All right, so we have 2 flip charts. Hopes, concerns. And I'm just going to act like the auctioneer, and if I see somebody make a nudge, raise your hand, or even touch your ear, I'm going to call on you to speak. Yes, Kathleen.
Yes.
Yes, Kathleen.
For concerns,
Yes.
adequate climate control throughout the year.
Good one.
And do you mean winter because it's too cold here,
Oh,
or
no,
do
I
you mean
winter
summer
and-
because it's
and
too
summer,
hot?
And both.
Yeah, because
And
when.
you never know throughout the day, volunteer.
Right. Yeah, okay, gotcha. And when this building was built, nobody thought of using it in the summer. And you had your hand up, and your name is Sarah. Okay.
A hope would be more space in the classroom.
Okay. Anybody else? Yes. Call. I'm sorry. So that's a hope. What was that?
And 6.
Oh, you want the 6th grade back too?
Elementary's K through 6.
Sure. Okay. Okay. Okay, I'll come back to you in a second to stand up over here. And my eyes aren't very good, sorry. Erica? Yes.
Adequate parking.
That would be a hope.
Yeah.
Had access to it.
How about a hope that you could actually get in the front door?
Yeah.
I haven't figured out how to do that yet. Okay?
Big space for special activities like science, art, theater, music, technology.
What was that list?
Science, theater, music, arts, technology.
What's that? Easier way to collaborate between classrooms. So 2 teachers or more working together. Okay. Yes. I'm trying to get your names. Oh, donate tag. Here you go. When you're done speaking.
More sustainability.
More sustainability. Does this school have any? Does the current building have any?
I haven't been here that long, but I don't.
Yes, sir.
Yes, Brian. I'd like to have more space to accommodate more meetings like this, because this is where we always come.
So you're thinking of meeting space for the public?
Meeting space for everybody, all together, for all events,
For like school-wide events.
for school-wide events.
You can't do when we have special HSA events, it's either,
Here or Jim.
yeah, and everybody's on top of everybody. So you have this great sense of community, but you can't.
You can't find
practice
them.
the community.
Yes. Okay. And I didn't call on you before.
I don't know if this is a concern or a hope, but it's both. The concern is a leaky roof, and a hope is a classroom that doesn't have buckets when it snows and rains. to
I heard
catch
about that.
water. And I have one more. Concern is creepy bathrooms, and a hope is something that's more welcoming to kids and not scary for kindergartners to have to go to the bathroom.
Name is?
John,
Yes.
adequate surrounding for playground and field.
I was gonna say, it's just, right now it's very open to the public as well as the school.
Just wander off. Oh, wander in, not wander off.
Yeah.
Although some schools that worry about kids wandering off too.
I think they can do that.
Okay, over here. Great. Okay, flexibility. Okay, and right behind your name, Pete. Pete. Affordability. Affordability. That's a good idea. Reserve. And there was a hand clear. Oh, it's not.
Brian again. I'd like to have updated library and computer systems.
Back corner?
Yeah, how you doing, Richard?
Richard.
Bleachers for the gym. Be nice to be able to watch the kids play sports.
Hand up, I haven't seen before. You are?
Larry,
Larry.
the size of the structure as it relates to the town's needs now, and future needs to make sure. I mean, we use an existing school, we put an addition on it, or we're gonna build a new school and make it large enough for our needs, or not too big. Schools are gigantic now, so I want to build.
How's this sound? Right size for now and future enrollments? Okay, and throw hands up over here.
Is that true?
Want to talk about that?
Well, there are.
It's your own dime. It's your own dime. But if
I mean, you know, I don't know if other people.
okay, you could raise local money for it, so I'll put it down. That's one of those classic functions that often needs to be seen in the community context. Partly because they're so expensive, and partly because there's a lot of demand outside of school hours. And you kind of start to back into the concept of community center with school attached. Which can happen here. Okay, you have maybe. Another yes?
Adequate storage.
Okay.
I think that my concern is what's going to happen in the meantime while all this is going on. The roof is already leaking, the divider in the gym is broken. What's going to happen to the kids who are currently here now? Can we continue to fix things? Just let it go.
And Chris, when you are, where did Chris go? When you're doing the wrap-up, can you touch on that issue? What happens during this design and transition period? Yes.
I think the idea of outdoor space as well as the garden.
So when you say community garden, you mean for non-school people to come and garden?
Well, they can help support the garden.
They being. So is the garden kids?
They're both for the students, like in the Lockner City Schools, and I taught all the time, students travel. And then they have the tutors, and then they would come out, but they would train the teachers as well as the students every week to have a plan for things right.
But basically, it's a garden that's focused on kids learning and kids management and then
As
maybe
well
to the school.
Yeah, as well as community. Community people would
So
sign up to
they may
help.
have a little plot.
Yeah, well, they would come and they would support the classroom teacher
Yes.
when they were doing community support and work for lessons on the
Right, but would they get their own vegetables?
No.
Okay. It's not like when you see in Boston, the bag
No,
baby is.
no, right.
Okay, it's for taste. Got it, thank you. I just needed to
No.
suss that out, be sure I understood. Oh, here's a hand that hasn't been up, and it is
Erica.
Eric.
Does this also incorporate the extended day program? Is that part of this whole program? I just want to make sure that that's incorporated.
I'll
that
put it
there's
down,
enough space
make
for
sure
the
we
extended
have. And that's one of those issues that'd be the last one that you're gonna work with others, community uses, et cetera. So you will weigh in on that in a few minutes. Extended day, yes, space first. And that often, because it does cost money for space and because it's often timeshare, you look for ways to use what you already have for extended day, but you also look to subtly redesign them, like putting storage rooms around cafeterias and water spots and sink points and things like that to be able to turn it into an activity center after school. But we've got it down and you're going to work with it a little bit later. Yes.
Perhaps a basic, Paul,
Yes.
perhaps a basic footprint for vocation exploration, because not all the students that will go here will college bound. So they have early exposure, perhaps to like a workshop setting or something like that, their trajectory.
Okay. We've got time for one more, and it's you.
Brand.
Okay.
So concern would be committing to a design or a program that is completely dated.
Okay, and with that, watching the clock, we're going to need to stop. Good stuff. I think we had 1 page of concerns and 4 of hopes. So hopeful group and lots of good thoughts on that. Okay, we are going to switch menus and where did I put my? Okay, so you have the pack in front of you. Did everybody get a packet? I've got 1.5 in my hands if you need them. You don't have them? Oh, there's one here. Very good. Okay, and then flip the agenda over to page 2. And what you have here is a horizontal worksheet, and it's called Exploring Innovation in Education. The reason you're doing this is that as we were prepping for all of the work we're doing, these practices were put on the table. I call them next practices. You are doing some of them here in the district and maybe in the school, but they're often things that parents aren't familiar with. And I thought, I suggested, and the administrator said, sure, let's share some ideas about these and hear what the people in the room, what the community thinks in terms of how it might apply to their kids. So read the instructions here. So there are 4 items. I'm going to share with you those in a minute on the slides. They're numbered 1, 2, 3, 4. Project-based learning, making things to learn, design thinking, blended learning and flipped classroom, and the last one is mastery learning and adaptive learning. I'm going to show you those one at a time. There are then 5 columns to the right of it. Does everybody have a pen or a pencil? Yeah, you have one, okay. That'll work great for checking things off, it's not gonna work so great for comments. So if you can't borrow one, I'll give you mine. Thank you. Everybody have a pen or pencil? All right, so as I am speaking, I think, I mean, it would be great if you could reflect while I'm speaking and do a checkbox. And the question for each of these is, speculate how effective each of the educational innovations outlined below would be for your children at Clyde Elementary School. So this is a little bit of speculation. You know, listen to what I'm saying. I have a second or two for clarification. I do have one short video in here on project-based learning that we'll watch. But basically asking you, knowing what we're going to tell you, to weigh in on whether it seems like that'd be a good thing for your kids. And then over the right-hand side, space for comments. Quick cash-food notes. You know, don't use full sentences, but anything to perhaps open up your thinking or share with us what your thinking is. Okay? All right, and you can see the screen pretty well, right? Screen's good? All right. I'm fine with all right, well, there's the agenda that we're doing. Here's PBL. Chris, you want to cue up the video? So, project-based learning, Nancy cited it. It's happening here, a little bit there. But it's basically launching kids doing projects. And by their doing the projects, they get to the core curriculum requirements. So, if the curriculum goal was, for example, learning how to calculate the area of a circle, you would give kids a project which ultimately required them to learn to do that in order to meet a bigger goal, which might be something like, figure out how to package da-da-da-da-da, and make it purposeful and make it creative. Too much of what our learning is very abstracted, and too often the reason that kids are told they need to know something is that they'll need it in order to do their next year's work, which isn't at all real. So PBL is an attempt to get to it. So Chris is going to cue up a 3.5-minute video from the Buck Institute, a little snippet on how a project evolved.
You remember what it was like in school. It was boring. You sat in class, memorized as much as you could, and tried to pass a test at the end. But is that good enough? These days, school can be more interesting and effective by focusing students on work that matters. This is project-based learning explained. Most adults live in a world of projects. Whether it's a job assignment, home improvement, or planning a wedding, we need to actively solve problems. But unfortunately, schoolwork looks more like this than this. Let's take a look at this project-based world. Meet Claire. She was recently presented with a challenge. Her company, Supersuds, makes soap, and it was up to her to find the most earth-friendly way to produce it in the future. Her boss gave her a budget and a few requirements, and it was up to her to come up with a solution. She organized and managed a team who researched the options and created materials summarizing the issues. Claire's team asked for feedback and presented their findings to the boss. Claire came out of the project looking like a rock star, and she learned a lot about green products. If you look closely, Claire's success involved critical thinking, collaboration, and communication, things that aren't often taught in traditional classrooms. The world needs more Claires, so how do we get them? The answer is project-based learning, or PBL. By focusing students on a project, teachers put them on a path that deepens their knowledge and builds skills they'll need in the future. Here's what I mean. Mr. Simmons has always been a good science teacher, and his students do well on Friday's tests. Unfortunately, what they learned was gone by Saturday morning. That wasn't good enough for him. Soon he learned about project-based learning and decided to give it a shot. Mr. Simmons got the idea for his first project on microorganisms when nearly half of his students were suddenly absent with the flu. He asked his students why they thought so many of their classmates got sick at the same time. That lively discussion produced a lot of good questions and a list of things the kids wanted to know. Mr. Simmons then announced their project was to help elementary school kids understand, how can we not get sick? After dividing the class into teams, he got them started on the project. It was up to the students to ask questions, research, collaborate, give each other feedback, and figure out the best ways to make their points clear to children. One team chose to make an educational video on the connection between hand washing and avoiding the flu. Another chose to create posters to show how viruses spread. The project teams showed off their final work to an enthusiastic audience of parents and their children at a nearby elementary school. Sitting in the front row was our good friend and local rock star Claire, who saw a bit of herself in the students. It was clear that the project was a success for the students, the audience, and Mr. Simmons. His students practiced critical thinking, collaboration, and communication. The project wasn't about memorization, but learning in depth about viruses and how to prevent spreading disease, a lesson they will never forget. At the end of the presentation, Claire introduced herself to the students and told them that they were rock stars and that the world needs more people who can think like them. To learn more about project-based learning, go to BIE.org.
Okay, back to slide. Any questions on the video? Okay. So the research shows that kids, when doing really well-formed projects, score higher on standardized testing.
Today's children function in a dangerous world. What meaning?
I don't know what that means. I guess that's YouTube thinking they're smarter than we are, or something like that. So, you know, by developing critical thinking skills, students learn how to solve problems. They actually do better on standardized testing without that teach-to-the test format. The book here, in the photo, is by Judy Helm and Lily Katz, and it's about project-based learning in the early years. And Judy Helm says, yeah, kindergartners can do it, first graders can do it. So it's not a high school thing, or this was probably middle school kids doing this video. It's all kids. So that's project-based learning. Tick the box, make the comments. We're going to move on to, I'm just going to skip this in the interest of time. Okay, so something that's related, but has a different focus, it's got maybe a nuanced version of thinking about projects, is this concept of making things to learn and its corollary, design thinking. Our schools, for years and years and years, have taught the scientific method, and that is the classic, rigorous, research-driven, critical thinking approach in school. Design thinking is what designers do. Architects, industrial designers, interior designers, graphic designers, clothing designers. And it's just as rigorous. It's just as difficult. And it has a heavy overlay of creativity on it. And creativity is one of the things that schools are looking to do as what we call it as part of one of the 21st century skills. So these are interrelated because making things to learn is a way of creating prototypes, of developing concepts and making them visible as part of your thinking. So here's what's happening right now. And this movement, by the way, is centered in San Francisco and Boston, the two high-tech centers in the United States. So right now, Harvard Graduate School of Education is in its second year of a 3-year research project trying to figure out how making things contributes to cognitive growth and how making things contributes to a person's sense of self-worth. Repairing things, inventing things, you know, whether it's sewn objects or, you know, cobbling together parts of bikes and making something different. That's what they're studying right now. And when I met the researchers a while ago, they said it's surprising. We've had education formalized in this country for 150 years, and nobody's ever asked this question. So there's not a lot of research on it, but they're trying to figure it out. Across the campus, the Harvard Graduate School of Design has a video out called Design and Thinking, where they're interviewing lots of designers and piecing together constructs of how one thinks when they're designing things. And then, back in California, IDEO, do you know IDEO? Do you know of their work, though? They invented the computer mouse, and they invented the first Macintosh computer, the packaging for that, and the design. They have shifted from an industrial design company to an innovation company. They are now just finishing up an education system for the state of Chile to reach kids in rural areas, poverty-stricken rural areas. So, and this is available on the web. So this movement is, I think, highly visible in this one example I'm going to show you. So this guy right here is Guiver Tully. And he runs a school in San Francisco called the Brightworks School, and it's all making things, K through 8. When I visited, he took me on tour, and we're looking at chairs that second graders were making. Now, they weren't making chairs because they're going to learn to become carpenters. They're making chairs because their curriculum goal was to learn about the skeletal system and the muscular system of the human body. The traditional way of doing that is to have a chart in the classroom with the skin peeled off, and you memorize all the parts. What they're doing is they're guiding the kids to making tools for which they need to know how big the human body is and how it moves. And therefore, that goal of making the chairs drives them into needing to know what that chart has and other things like that. So this example is making things to learn, and their work is highly visible, and I'll bet that the kids have a lot to talk about at home when they go. When they go home at night, they have a lot to talk about. Around the room were these little sketches and photographs on design thinking. So while the kids are doing their making the chairs, they're also learning about the process that they're following. So that's number 2, making things to learn. Oh, this by the way, is the shop that they have. It's a wall in the corridor, and they do have a small room about 20 feet long with a chop saw in it. So it doesn't take a lot of space to do this. Safety has to be enforced, of course, but it does not take a big shop to do this work. That's number 2. Number 3 is blended learning and flipped classroom. Nancy Gustafson said this is happening in the middle school right now. The basic concept is this. Traditional education, the teacher starts out in the classroom and delivers some information to kids. That's their initial introduction, and often the teacher does that on a regular basis. And in high schools, the pattern that we're trying to get away from is the teacher does that all period long. Blended learning would be having the kids learning things outside of school before they come to class. In other words, flipping the classroom, flipping homework upside down, getting some content before you come in, and then coming into class and doing something with it. Moving the classroom experience to being more hands-on. And this work was pioneered in the upper years, college and junior college and high schools, and it's been remarkably effective. And the real question, of course, is how low in the grade level is it going to go? Does it work for 5th graders? Does it work for 2nd graders? You figure that out. But that's number 3. 5 points to put your Xbox on. Lastly, then, is this concept of mastery learning and adaptive learning. Mastery learning is the broad concept. Adaptive learning is one way to get to it with technology. So everybody's used to school where kids are organized by, to quote Ken Robinson, they are batched by date of manufacture. We take all kids who are born in a certain year and we start them at one time and we keep them as close as possible, lockstep through the whole grade level, no matter how much they've learned in a year. And so we have some kids that are moving on up the grade level with social promotions. We have other kids who are bored to death by the time February comes around because they know all that stuff. And the standard delivery methods don't keep them interested. Now, there are ways you can adjust the classroom deliveries, and Millis is ahead of the curve on this, but the big picture is the picture presented by mastery learning. What if we had a system that was not based on moving kids ahead based on data manufacture, but we had a system where kids would learn the stuff and move on, either move on to other stuff or even shift some grade levels if it's appropriate. And a system which would not be locked in so rigidly to, I'm a 2nd grader. Identity might change, student identity might change, it might be much more flexible, and it might be helpful for kids. Phenomenal consequences. Nobody knows all of what they are. But I do know that this is a national movement right now to think about this. The state of Maine Department of Education has required all of its school units, every single school district, to develop a plan for mastery learning. That's how serious they are. Maine's a bellwether state. They're often ahead of the curve. So think about that. Think about alternatives to batching kids by date of manufacture, and enrichment that might come if we really work hard and pay attention to what kids know and how to bring up the ones that are weaker and how to keep the ones that are stronger much more engaged. So those are your 4 issues. Work on your sheets. If you're done, you can chat among yourselves for a minute, and then in about 5 minutes, I'm going to ask for any observations, either by table or by individual. Okay? And then at 5 hours, we're going to take a break. Okay? So you're on your own and with your teammates for 10 minutes. So let's do this. Let's spend a minute or two hearing folks who want to shout out and share what you were talking about. But then before we wrap this issue, what I want to do is do a quick poll. So I'll go down through the numbers, and I'm going to ask you to raise your hand if you put a tick box on the first or second columns. Okay, we'll do that as the wrap. And when all is said and done, like you do, then put your worksheets in the middle of the table. I'm going to scoop them up when we're done. My staff's going to transcribe these. We're going to have a record of what everybody was thinking. It'll go into it'll inform the administration and the teachers, but it'll also go into the record. So any quick thoughts that people might want to share? What were you talking about at your tables? What was the buzz? Yes?
Hi, I think we were talking about the value and policies, and really looking individually at the child themselves and the benefits based on the individual.
So keep learning personalized. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Anybody else?
Yeah, we were similar, right? Not swinging the pendulum that it's all one of these or all one or the other.
Nobody said it was.
Yeah, we didn't want to absolutes or traditional classroom isn't an absolute that works for every kid. None of these are going to work absolutely for every kid.
Yeah.
So you don't want to construct your space. It was one of the hopes earlier that the space is adaptable and flexible, so that for the pockets of kids where one of these works really well, you have the space, which is what we don't have today, to play with these different concepts and find kids that can work.
Right. Yeah, and research shows that the best teachers have a healthy balance. Lots of different modalities for kids. Okay, other thoughts? Are there other buzzes at the tables? Okay, let's do a quick poll then. Go through the numbers. The first one was project-based learning. Raise your hand if you ticked off box 1 or 2. I'm just hold them up while I count. 1, 2, 3. Look, is that up? 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19. Okay. All right. Next was making things to learn. 1. Up with your hands if that's what you did. Box 1 or 2. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 27. Okay. All right, blended learning, flipped classrooms. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Okay, and lastly, mastery learning. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 8. Okay, and then just out of curiosity, on mastery learning, how many people ticked off the very right-hand box? The one that was called not effective. Oh, come on, I saw more in the right-hand column than you're admitting to.
I kind of feel that way. I checked off, I don't know, but I feel in mind. But what are the social consequences, unintended consequences of feeling that?
2.5. Yeah. And by the way, I didn't mean to imply that we're going to have a free-for-all with kids not knowing where your kid is. Maybe. I do know a school that's done this, a whole network of schools that have done this, and they say the grade level distinctions become meaningless, and they are in fact labels. And if you're behind the 8 ball on learning, it's a bad label. So there's some very positive social consequences. If you promote a 2nd grader up to 6th grade, then there's really crazy social emotional consequences, but it's got to be worked out. Okay, very good. That's where we are. You can see the scoring. Appreciate you putting your stuff, your responses in the stack on your desk. Take a 10-minute break. Come on back, and we're going to jump into thinking about community uses for the building. All right, there's a few people somewhere else, but let's get started. Thanks for joining in. You can flip to the last page in your packet. First of all, timekeeping. We have until, Chris, you only need 10 minutes? Yeah? Okay. We have until 10 of to do this. I'm not sure that this takes 50 minutes, so I'll watch you, and if it looks as though the conversations are lagging, we'll call, have you report out, and we might get chatted here. No promises, it's all up to you. This one is one about community uses and needs tucked into the building. It's organized with a set of issues, and I'll cover those in a second. And a lot of lines here for you to record thoughts. But what I'd like to do is switch this just a little bit. Let me read you the questions, then have you reflect for just a couple of minutes on your own and jot down some ideas and get them on the paper. Then, when people at the table feel satisfied that they've got their first thought reflections down, then the flip charts at your tables, and we'll get yours set up in a second, I stole it. The flip charts will be your friend for recording group discussion thoughts. So if the person nearest the flip chart can grab the 2 markers, or if you find yourself in a position that you don't want to be, swap your seat with somebody else. And record your thoughts. I'm going to come around and mark what table you're at. But the idea, here's the idea behind this. The idea is to make learning visible. As you talk with each other, you're going to learn things. If you have a recorder who's jotting down the quick thoughts as you're talking, and if you change your mind, you just cross it out. But while you are talking and if words are appearing on the flip chart, it's making those thoughts visible. And then when it's time to share, if we're going to share about 10 minutes before we wrap this challenge, then everybody in the room can see what you were thinking. And it's just a really simple way of communication. Too often in schools, we have kids do stuff, and they do it on 8.5 by 11 paper, and it goes in the pack, and it disappears, and it's not visible at all. It's just a technique for being visible. So here are the questions. So picture school. Picture school as we know it runs from what time in the morning? 8:30 till what time in the afternoon? 2:45. Okay, how many days a week? Okay, that represents probably something like 1/4 to 1/3 of the total week time, of the total hours in a week. Maybe half of the hours that people are really awake. How can we make this building that we're going to build, and that's going to last 50 years, how do we make it serve more people than just those elementary kids? So what can we do for community uses? Here's some things to consider. Site planning, including bus drop-off and parent drop-off and all that stuff. Site planning in terms of play fields or playgrounds or play spaces or outdoor gardens. We heard earlier that you used the term community gardens. You meant people are going to come and help the kids do gardening. I thought you meant come and have designated patches. You could do that. I don't know, but that's a possibility. So that anything related to the site is up for grabs. What about looking at the time of school, and figuring out whether there are venues that should happen before school and after school, or evenings and weekends? Some of those could be community uses of just adults, others could be exploratory programs or enrichment programs for kids, and they don't even necessarily have to be kids from this school. We could bridge the gaps between buildings, and in fact, one of the problems that most school districts have is the disjointedness between different school buildings. It's hard for educators to talk to each other, kids don't know each other, things like that. And so, are there any connections we can make with other schools, and how can we serve the public better? And then summer, of course, somebody wanted air conditioning already. We got that. I think that was the first thing that was said. So I think that is with some anticipation that we might use it for summer. But what are you going to use it for in the summer? So let us know about that. All right. On this clock, it's about 1/4 after. Why don't you work through and take a few minutes and reflect on these, get your own personal answers, and then when your table seems to be ready, duke it out with everybody else at your table and come up with some group discussion, shared concepts of what's most important. Okay, folks, I'm watching the clock. Finish the sentence you're on. We need our spokespeople to share, and we need somebody with a smartphone that they can set on 1.5 minutes. Anybody have a smartphone that they can set for 1.5 minutes? I understand that that is not an iPhone.
I am not an iPhone.
So you have a Samsung or something? And it needs to be charged.
It is. No, it is.
Can you do the honors? 1.5. We're going to go boom, boom, boom. And can you set it on a ringer that's really obnoxious and loud so we'll all hear it? All right. Well, do you not want to do this?
No, I can do it. Absolutely. I'll do it.
All right. Let's go. We're going to go. Oh, it's got to wake up. All right. What I find is that when we have a person make a bing sound, there's so much human error that there's no consistency. We're trying to get
Why don't you do the first one so we don't hold things up?
Oh, there's a ringer. Who's got that? Whose was that? Nobody's claiming it. Okay, let's get going. Start with this table. You're going to have 1.5 minutes. Rotate that around so people can see it. You get 1.5 minutes to share what you think were the most important ideas. You may not get time to share them all.
Okay, that's fine. So we talked about the extended day facility and making it sort of extended day / recreation center. And we're using the examples of in Medfield, the MAPS program and the rec center that's across the street from the new police station. What's it called? The FAST Center. So I'm sure you're aware. We wanted more meeting space here for the Council of Aging to participate here, encouraging those folks who may not vote yes for this project to provide them some space that they may want to participate, vote yes.
I mean, that's just a sleazy marketing technique. Don't you care about it after the vote?
So additional meeting space too to help adult education. You know, there's a lot of adult basic education courses that are out there, maybe a revenue stream to help the school. And an auditorium. Yeah, we have one at the high school, but we were talking about maybe having an auditorium space here, maybe not as big, but we could rent out for community organizations and events. And space for rec department to hold events, half-day programs, sporting events in courts and fields that we brought up earlier, and our hopes, and obviously being able to run camps here inside the building.
So we have summer camp?
Summer camps, specifically summer. If you have a rec center, you can do other programming on that. Do a good job in the time.
Perfect timing, Jason. Thank you. Thank you, Jason.
So Jason touched on a number of things that we talked about too. One of the things we have is revenue opportunities. So as a building space, being conscious that we might be able to leverage that as an opportunity to rent them out. Whether it's kitchens, performance centers like theater, gym, fitness, potentially community fitness area, and the design of the building would have to be a way that access was safe and secure while session, things like that. So the design of these things with access and security would be paramount. As we go down too, so we also I thought about just trying to think of the overall design being multifunctional and modular, co-locate potentially other town services. So if you think of the central office for the schools, is there a way that it could be a space incorporated for them to potentially take the costs of some other buildings, maybe eliminate some of the needs for the other town buildings if they're incorporated in more efficient buildings? It could be shared space. Student enrichment, intervention before and after school, or we also talked about extended school, talked about summer vacation camps for renting as well.
Early intervention,
having
an early intervention program built into the school.
And then, yeah, potentially kind of a stretch idea, but creating a living experiment within the school in terms of like energy efficiency or recycling and those types of green exercises where people come in and see it in action, things like that, where people could start to understand more about how they take advantage of some of those things.
All right, thank you, Greg.
Okay, so on ours, one of the things on site was to see about using solar panels on the roof, just because it's going to be a large area, and if we can gain some either income or generate enough power to do some of the school, it would probably be helpful. One-way traffic flow, one entrance, one exit to make it easy for the drop-off. Probably with enough where you can spread it out a little bit so it's not a traffic jam if you had to get around and out. Parking, parents access during the daytime, come here in the daytime, have been unable to find a spot, parked illegally, grab my kids anyhow. Separate teacher parking, just so that way they have, it's a benefit to the teachers. Defined recess area, so right now, this is brought up before, the kids go out and they are all over the place. Maybe it doesn't have to be fenced in, but some way to determine that it's inside the field area. Incorporate an extended day into the fold, and that was brought up. My kids went there. It's a great program. It should be in the school. And then after school, evening sports, adult ed, fitness areas, and then same thing, summer day camps, because when June comes and we have nowhere to put the kids, we're screwed. So.
So I think at this point a lot of this stuff has probably already been said, but we talked a lot about drop-off, pick-up, and parking. So enough parking that everyone who needs to park can park, along with separate spaces for teachers versus parents. A way to better optimize the parent drop-off process so that everyone can get in and out. And also some consideration to what we do with all the snow, so it's not just piled up and eliminating part of the parking lot. So I have some idea of where that can inflict. We also talked about when the kids come into school, it'd be good to have a place where they can congregate instead of going straight from the bus into their classroom, car classrooms, so there's some open space for social interaction. And then along the lines of other people, multi-function spaces, with the idea that it can be segregated from the rest of the school so that you can only open that part of the building for, say, tutoring or other things outside the regular school day that everyone can use. And more fun space after school outside of the extended day. Kind of like every team I was talking about with different programs they've seen. So we didn't have specific programs, but certainly sounds like a good idea.
A lot of plagiarizing going on tonight. So we have looked for the site planning, consider a new traffic pattern or workable traffic pattern for getting in and out. We also talked about the extended day, either before and after school, either having an annex like it is now or incorporated into the new building. Then we went on with the thought process of, if we made it into the new building, we would make it a portion, a percentage of the new building that would be turned on to the rest of the school so the community could access it without turning on the whole school, and have janitorial services during the weekend. We also built it out so we could have maybe 4 big rooms. You could do kids programs there, Girl Scout, Boy Scouts, you could have adult programs there. If by chance population shifted over time, we closed down a couple rooms and turned into classrooms. So functional going forward. We also included a gym, but we didn't get too much into that for additional as well. And then, very similar, over the summer, talking about camps, utilizing it for rec activities, and renting it out for other programs in other towns for additional revenue for us.
We were talking about the site plan, and the first thing that we did talk about was having a quote-unquote real gym, so that it's big enough, so many people are using this gym now. There's, as someone pointed out earlier, there's no bleachers, divider doesn't work. Our community really needs more of a gym for the recreational programs, for travel sports, for middle school, for high school, for the elementary school. We had talked about if we were to build a new building, the site planning, possibly having a courtyard in the middle with either that garden or the outdoor classroom. If it were the outdoor classroom, possibly having a theater so that some the arts could be there, or concerts could be held outside. One of the big things that we talked about with the site planning is to have a kitchen that the community could use as well for nutritional information, for cooking programs. Another thing that we thought would be really good, as you guys have touched on, is the intergenerational programs to try to get the senior citizens on board, because that's going to be tough with getting a school to pass. But if it's something that they know they're going to be able to use, and maybe having a tech lab that we can have classes that teaches the adults about social media and about how to use all the things that are up and coming that we have right now. Oh, and just obviously more space for the fundraisers. I'm sure all of you guys have been to the fundraisers that are held in here, and how crazy it is. You've got all the kids running every which way. It would just be nice if there was some space for them to run around. And then the whole security thing, having it set off separate for safety.
Okay, so there you have it. Lots of good ideas, some bit of overlap, that's fine. It just shows that different table teams are thinking in the same wavelength, which means there's more support for those ideas. By putting them on the flip charts, they will get all recorded. I'm going to take photographs of them. My staff will turn them into Word, and then do the record, and we'll get to the architects and administration, and it'll basically, I think what you basically created was the checklist. So we'll see where it goes. Stay tuned. With that, Chris?
All right, so a few minutes left here. I'm Chris from Tappe Architects. With me tonight is Matt, also from our office, one of the architects in our office, and Charlie Hayes, the principal lead guy, I guess. He couldn't make it tonight, but we are really excited to be on this project, and if you want to learn a little bit more about us, I'm not going to go into that tonight, but there's, you can go to our website, which is tappe.com, or we made a little video, sort of welcome Millis introduction to us and our practice and what we bring to you guys. And it's on the millisschoolproject.org website, and there's a little video link under, I think it's under the team page or something, dig around and find it. And it's a 3-minute video that gives a little bit of context to what Tappe brings to this process. What we've been doing to date is a lot of stuff that's related to feasibility study. Feasibility is the term is inherent to what you're understanding, right? So we're trying to find the most feasible project, both in terms of program, educational program, and budget. And so there's a lot that goes into that. The SBA is very prescriptive in things that we have to produce, different styles of options, whether it's ad reno, straight renovation, new building, whatever it is, even vetting sites. Is this the best site, or do we need to look at other sites? And so starting out right now, we've already done some of that preliminary study. We've looked at town-owned property and private-owned property for is it feasible. The first step of that is to do a test fit, which is a floor plan, basic first floor plan, to see if it fits on the buildable area of the sites. What we have so far, this is just a few of the spattering that we've looked at, and these are sort of the final 4 that are remaining, and some of these may come off or get moved around or whatever. You know, we're not having to spend a ton of time going into them. Asking properties town-owned. It doesn't have a lot of buildable area once you get past the wetlands requirements and setbacks and things like that, so it becomes hard to fit a building of the size that we're talking about for your project. And there's already, I believe, a planned field development for that site. So if the building went there, we'd have to reconfigure what that was going to be and the solution for that. There's a property on Ridge Street, which is privately owned. It has difficult site access because you'd actually have to cross over wetlands, and the planning requirements for that is that once you do that, you have to replicate somewhere else, and so then you're taking new sites to, so it's just kind of not advantageous, but there is still some space there to do that. And it does obviously have a building area as well because it is pretty much wet over there. The Main Street property is a very good site. It's actually large, and that's what you want. It has a lot of buildable area, but it is a previously industrial use, and so there's a lot of constraints related to that. It being privately owned, you have an acquisition cost. That's the truth with both privately owned properties right now. That gets factored into the project. So again, trying to keep costs down, more dollars. What we always say in our office is maximize the amount of dollars that go to kids in seats, right? You want kids in seats learning, not on extra things, and that goes into phasing, which I can talk about later. But you don't want to spend money on swing space like portables that get set up for a year and a half and then they go away, and that's a chunk of money that didn't get through the project spent, right? So we try to find ways to build around that and build consecutively in phases so that you don't end up in those situations. The existing school site is obviously the one that we know is option and legit and it's viable because your school's here now. And so just taking a moment to dig into that a little bit further, your school floor plan. I don't know if anybody's ever really seen it like this. Put the roof off and you see the floor as it is, and you know that it's not really one level, it's three, right? And so it's extremely challenging, and it's built in a way that's not conducive to these ideas that we're talking about, 21st century education, not open classrooms, but more collaboration, more communication. All these ideas aren't really embedded in this plan. And the biggest thing that's out of this that we heard earlier is the fifth grade's not in this building. So you immediately have an issue if you're going to try to bring fifth grade over. So that's one of the challenges that we're studying at this point. I talked a second ago about test fits. This is what it looks like to test fit buildings on a site. The red boxes are basically 60,000 square foot footprint. That doesn't mean you're building 60,000 square feet. It just means that the first floor would have to accommodate a certain chunk of space. And then you can go vertical from there. Maybe it's a two-story building. We don't know yet. There's lots of elementary schools in this state that are 2 stories, even 3 stories. We don't think we'll get to that, but it's obviously options to consolidate space. So when we talk about doing test fits, this is the kind of stuff we do. I can tell you that 1B is probably a non-starter right now, just to sort of tell you how we think about these things, because it's actually stormwater retention. And so if you put something on that site, you've got to do things like compensatory storage. You've got to figure out how to store water underneath the building, which is not a great idea ever, but it happens. And it has a big dollar cost to it too. So we study those things and say, if you do that, it has a cost value, and it's probably not the best part of the site to do it. So don't get too fixated on this right now. It's just to say that when we're studying options, you'll see us generate probably, I don't know how many options, but it's going to be a lot. And you go into the next phase with a preferred list of about 3 or 4 options, and then you go from there to a preferred final schematic, and then we develop that, and that's some of what Tim was talking about earlier, just the phasing we do along those lines. And so all of this is, and you could obviously, the 1A orange end up with a renovated addition. Highly doubt that it's just going to be a straight renovation, because you can't get the fifth grade in if you do that. So, and that's one of the desires now. One of the questions brought up, earlier was, if I can paraphrase, what do we do about in the meantime? So you've got, the reality is, you'll vote in November, successful vote, then you've got, probably another, year of design, and just permitting stuff, and then you can start construction, and it's probably a 2-year construction time. Roughly speaking, it could be made better than that, or it could be longer than that, depending on phasing. So it's really, these are just kind of rough numbers. So you do have a time span that you have to continue to maintain the building, and that's the hard chunk for people to bite into, because you're spending money on a building that may or may not be around in 3 years. But what we like to call it is triage. You have to triage things here to keep kids in the school until it can be built. And working with the school committee, if something comes up that needs to be done, like obviously the roof needs some help, to put it lightly. But if things like this need to be done, they'll tell us what those needs are, and we'll look at it and just basically analyze it and say, you might need to put a little bit of money towards that now just to sort of stop the leak. But maybe it's not a full-blown re-roof or something like that, because the way the options are leading is a certain direction, and we don't think you should re-roof the building at this time. So we'll make recommendations like that along the way, and I think the goal would try to be, probably speaking for the committee, is to try to do it out of your maintenance budget as best we can. But if it has to go outside of that for something special, we'll talk to you about it against that. So that's really the kind of where we're going. We've had engineers in this building over the Christmas break. You might have seen boring rigs out doing test borings. One of the things we're really sensitive to is really finding out the characteristics of soil, making sure we understand what that looks like, both from every aspect that you can imagine, buildability and contaminants and everything else. So we've bored the site pretty well. We've had engineers come in and do analysis from everything from hazardous materials to HVAC and structure and architectural elements, and even Frank looking at some of the program elements to analyze the school as it is. So we're well into the process. We're really plowing ahead and making these deadlines come up. With that, I think that I can answer specific questions if you want to come and talk to me. Actually, I'm going to stand back there because there's 2 things. There's this form, this building project community survey. If you have not filled this out, it's really, really helpful for you to do that. You can either do it by writing on this, or you can put it in an email to, what's the email address? School. I think it's on here actually. Yeah, it's at the bottom of this page in red. Right here. Schoolproject@millis.net. You can email responses to that, but also on the website, which is right here, this right here. There's a link to a digital version of this survey where you can just type it in online and hit submit, and it goes directly to a spreadsheet that we're calculating all of this stuff in. So this is one way that you can get feedback. And I'll stand at the back if you want to give me those, or just talk to me in a minute. And also, if you've signed in but not put your email address down, but you want to stay sort of in the loop and sort of get on a mailing list maybe, please give us that as well. So did you have anything else? No? Anybody? Okay, we're done. Well, thanks for coming. If I did not scoop up your earlier worksheet, leave it on the table, and I will. And have a good buzz. Hope you enjoyed the evening, so thanks for coming.